Her musical director was the star of the Ballet Comique de la Reine, violin maestro Balthazar de Beaujoyeux, also known as Baldassare de Belgioioso or even Baltasarini de Belgiojoso from Savoy. Apart from having a quite unnecessary number of versions of his already quite silly name, Bazar was reputedly the finest fiddler in Christendom. Amongst his many talents was one which gained for him the post of bedroom valet to Queen Catherine. Clearly he spent many an intense hour with her because he soon persuaded her of the many startling possibilities offered by his instrument. But it goes without saying that a person like Queen Catherine, who wanted nothing but the best, wouldn't have been seen dead with a few crudely made street instruments in her lovely homes. So she sought advice and commissioned another Italian to come up with a set of refined, professionally designed stringed instruments. The expert she hired was to become one of the most celebrated instrument makers in history, Andrea Amati of Cremona. Cremona was and still is Violin City. 100 years after Amati, the most famous craftsman in history, Antonio Stradivari, was to set up shop here. But why, oh why, did Cremona, a sleepy provincial town in Lombardy, become the world centre of violin making? Was it just accident, like the one that caused ham to come from Parma, or cakes from Pontefract, or the tarts from Bakewell? Cremona lies within the orbit of the Renaissance powerhouses of Milan, Mantua and Florence, with their rich patrons eager to buy the best. Genoa and Venice were within easy trading distance, and from these seaports it could import all the exotic ingredients it needed for the varnishing of violins. Cremona already had a reputation for fine woodworking, and it's likely that its expertise for instrument making grew from that. Andrea Amati was, as far as we know, already well established as a maker of stringed instruments. We don't know when exactly he started to turn his hand to violin making, nor do we know why Catherine de Medici particularly chose him. But she was a Medici, and her family had a habit of picking out the best people in every field. Someone had done their homework for her, and Amati got the job. Good call. This is one of the violins that Amati made for Catherine. It's one of the batch of 38 that she ordered on behalf of her son, Charles IX. And you can just about make out a few letters of his royal motto on the side, Pietata et Justitia, piety and justice. The city of Cremona, of course, would never let it out of its grasp, but if you wanted to buy it off them, you'd probably have to have in excess of 10 million quid in your pocket for this extraordinary piece of musical history. Amati's violin was louder and more capable of vibrato than any previous stringed instrument, and its tone was wonderfully expressive. The real key to its future career was its arched bridge, which allowed the player to move the bow swiftly and easily between the high and the low notes. Amati's violins were altogether more sophisticated and polished than their folk fiddle cousins. They were aesthetically attractive and beautifully crafted and varnished to suit the wealthy patrons who bought them and the new breed of professional musician who played them. These were top-of-the-range, high-spec, pro models. Another Amati breakthrough was in tone and volume. The soundbox may look small, but it's so acoustically ingenious that the notes sing out and reverberate. His prototype was a near-perfect instrument at first attempt. Apart from a few minor adjustments, it's more or less the same instrument we play today. What's more, thanks to Amati's pioneering work, the violin was able to spawn larger versions of itself in the shape of the viola and the cello and ultimately the double bass. This development gave composers maximum flexibility. Up to the 16th century, instrumental music had been the poor relation of vocal and choral music, always the support act and never the star. But the power and range of the violin family led the way to the emergence of pure instrumental music for its own sake. From the violin came the string quartet. And from the string quartet came the orchestra. Thanks to her vital role in the development of the violin, Catherine's place in musical history is secure, but her reputation has been overshadowed by the religious wars that gripped France throughout her reign, and for which she was blamed. In fact, she tried to reconcile the two bitterly opposed religious parties in her kingdom to no avail. Religious war rampaged unchecked in France for many decades, and it was characterized by the periodic massacring of innocent civilians. The violence reached the French royal family itself. Here in 1560, at one of their many castles overlooking the Loire at Amboise, a dispute between Catholic and Protestant factions over who should control the boy king ended in appalling bloodshed. The Duke of Guise, the Catholic leader, had his Protestant enemies hanged from this balcony above the town. Hundreds of others were butchered, their mutilated bodies thrown in sacks into the river below. And so it's deeply ironic that Catherine's great musical success came at the price of her political failure. Catherine de Medici didn't set out to invent the orchestra, the symphony, or even ballet. The aim of her court entertainments was to promote a sense of harmony and tolerance, qualities that were in desperately short supply in 16th century France. For her, music and dance were the ultimate expressions of those values. During Catherine's lifetime, music experienced a dramatic transformation. It began the 16th century totally subservient to the church. It ended it spreading into every area of life. Music's renaissance reached its peak with the genius of Palestrina, the ingenuity of Amati, and the imagination of a Medici queen. In the castles of France, the workshops of Cremona, and the basilicas of Rome, modern music was born.
Next on 4, soldier poets leave us their legacy from the First World War trenches.